Shalom, shalom. Welcome to another one of our weekly Bible studies. My name is YAH, and we are here with our weekly Bible study. Just bear with us. We've been going through some difficulties, to say the less, trying to bring this stuff to you. Just to give you the latest update, it's almost comical now. Literally about 5 minutes before the class started, my computer, my MacBook Pro 2020, MacBook Pro 16-inch just shut down completely. Shut down, like went to sleep. It's plugged in everything. I mean, just went to sleep. So it goes to sleep. All right. I keep messing with it, comes on, keeps cutting off, cutting off, cutting off. So I'm like, all right, now the whole computer just shuts down at a specific time. So I don't know what it is, but either way, y'all's will. I through sheer determination, I did a workaround to use my wife's MacBook to somewhat put some of this stuff together so that we could try to do this class because this is pretty important class. So the Bible study we're going to attempt to do today is called YAH's appointed times and his holy days. So YAH's feast days and appointed times. All right. So what we're going to go over is we're going to go over the first half of the feast days. When you look at that word Shana, which means year in Hebrew, it means doubling or coupling or flipping, folding. So the holy year is the same. You have the first half, you have a certain amount of holy days, and then the second half, you have a certain amount of holy days, and the days fall on similar days of the month. So it's almost like a duality. So again, bear with us. Typically, I have this whole thing prepared. I have a graphic that goes up. I'm using a whole different computer. Praise y'all. I remember some of the passwords. I was able to get into some of the other accounts so that I can actually stream this. So we're gonna go ahead and attempt to stream this. What I have is some scripts that I can pull offline so that you can read along. But the main thing that we want to understand with these holy days is that Mashiach is fulfilling these things. He is literally the holy days. So with him fulfilling these holy days, portion of them he fulfilled in the flesh when he came here and died. And the second half of the holy days, which is the second half of the season, we are fulfilling that now, being the body of Mashiach, fulfilling it through him, through his witness, through his testimony, through Yah's word. So we're going to go over that. One thing that I never received when I first started and came into this word as an Israelite is I never got a real good explanation on the holy days. I wasn't really taught how to calculate the holy days, when it was, what does it mean, what's the spiritual significance. We were just taught, hey, it's on this day, show up. And unfortunately, a lot of mores and teachers and elders and Bible study teachers really don't understand the calendar. They don't really understand a lot of this, but what they understand is tradition, what was passed down, what was told to them, and that's what they go by. And then it just becomes a tradition. So we're getting out of tradition, which could mislead us, and we're trying to get back into law, back into righteousness, with the Most High set aside, how he described, because remember, he said, let it be done on earth as it is in heaven. So being that there's a lot of dispute on calculating the month, calculating the days, the Shabbats, all of that, even the understanding of how to number these days. We have holy days all over the place. We got some people in holy days right now getting ready to finish atonement. We got other people that are going into booths or finishing Feast of Booths, which is tabernacles. So it's all over the place. Then you have the Jewish people. They start in the new year in the beginning of what they call the seventh month, which makes absolutely no sense. How can it be the new year if it's the seventh month? If the next month is the eighth month, it can't be the new year. So you got a lot of stuff going on. So this has been going on for a long time, even from the days of Mashiach. Because when we look at when Mashiach kept the holy days, especially Passover, he kept it a completely different day. He kept it before all the Yahudim kept the Passover. So he was keeping an ancient calendar. They're keeping a traditional calendar, a calendar based on whoever dominated them at the time. So we're going to get into that and get a better understanding of these holy days, so that we can know how to fulfill them in the flesh, how to fulfill them spiritually, and how this plays in our salvation. So we're going to first open up in Exodus, Shemot, chapter 5. And I apologize because I'm on a different computer. I couldn't send out the note on the app to get everybody to know that we were streaming on the app. So I won't be streaming on the app, but it will be up later when the class is over. So go ahead and share this class if you're seeing it, because I'm not able to let people know. But if you share it, people may find out. So we're going to open up in Exodus chapter 5. Exodus chapter 5. And I'm going to try to see if I can pull these scripts up. If not, you will have to go ahead and just read along on your own Bible. So let me see if I can get this going. So we should be in Exodus. All right, chapter 5. All right, let's see if I can pull this up. Bear with me. I'm trying to see if I can get a page open so that we can do this. So I'm going to look up KJV with Strong's. All right, so I got one here. All right, so we're going to Exodus. If I can get this thing to pull up, Exodus, and we're going to go to chapter 5. All right, let me blow this up a little bit so we can see it a little bit bigger. And then now I'm going to go ahead and try to share. So bear with me, brothers and sisters. Let me go ahead and share this and see if it comes up. Let's see. All right, just having difficulty sharing. Let me try to do it and see if I can do it on Safari. Chrome is giving problems trying to share that. All right, so let me go here. We're gonna try it again, and bear with us, brothers and sisters. We've been under some severe attacks. I don't know what the source is, but we doing the best we can. Y'all that have been with us, you know I'm always prepared. I come with the graphics, I come with the scripts, the classes, everything is ready. But we going through some difficulties, which we don't know what the source of it is. But so we're just doing the best we can. But what we're gonna do is, if it's in our power, we definitely gonna give you these classes, especially with people asking and trying to learn. All right, so let me try this in Safari. All right. Oh man, I can't even get this thing to pull up in Safari. All right, let's try it again. All right, so I got it. All right, I'm gonna try. Let's see. Let's try a new share. Let's see if it pull up. All right, so it pulled up in Safari. So I got it. Got the scripts up. Brothers and sisters, you know, when there's a will, there's a way. If you have a desire to learn this word, and you would like somebody to help show you this word according as it's written, we gonna do everything we can to bring it to you. And Shalom, brother Yafi Yehuda. Good to see you, family. All right, so we're at Exodus, Shemot, chapter 5. And we're going to start this at verse 1. And what we're going to see here is that uh, Yah wanted to release the children of Israel out of Egypt for one specific reason, for a major specific reason. This is the reason that Yah told Moses, "This is why I'm freeing the people." Now he said, I heard the cry, all that, but this is what I want you to do. All right, so we're in Exodus, Shemot, chapter 5, and we're going to start this at verse 1. All right. And afterward, Moshe and Aaron went in and told Pharaoh, "Thus says Yahweh Elohim of Yasharal, let my people go." So if you haven't seen this before, if you look on the screen here, you see these numbers right here. These are the Strong's numbers. So after every Hebrew word that was used, there's a strong number. So and obviously wasn't in there. Afterward was there. And the word for afterward was H310. Oh, geez, this thing taking. I'm trying to pull this thing up. All right, so the Strongs ain't pulling up, so bear with us on that. We just gonna do the best we can. All right, so all these numbers give you a definition of each word. So H4872 would be for Moshe, and the Hebrew for that would be Moshe. Moses is the English, so forth and so on. So, all right, so we're gonna have to kind of dumb it down a little bit because we can't pull up the Strongs. It's taking forever, literally. Now all of a sudden, even her computer running slow. So anyway, so we're gonna do the best we can. So, all right, so back to verse 1. And afterward, Moshe and Aaron went in and told Pharaoh, "Thus says Yahweh Elohim of Yasharal, let my people go, that they may hold a feast unto me in the wilderness." And Pharaoh said, "Who is Yahweh that I should obey his voice to let Yasharal go? I know not Yahweh." So he's telling you right here that they may hold a feast, that they may hold a feast. So let's see what that word for feast is. All right, so we're going to pull that up. You can't, if you have a Bible concordance or Strong's concordance, you can see these definitions. I'm just going to give you the numbers. You can write them down and look them up on yourself. Or when we do this class, again, we'll try to put up the Strongs. All right, so we're Exodus chapter 5 and verse 1. And it said, "Let my people go, that they may hold a feast." So the Strongs for that was H2287. H2287. So right here, H2287. So the word for that in Hebrew is Hagag, Hagag, which is spelled Chagag. So that's what this feast in Hebrew meant. And that is literally to move in a circle, that is, march in a sacred procession, to observe a festival, by implication to be giddy. So this is why the pagan so-called holidays, Christmas and Thanksgiving and Easter, they have a parade, and a parade where they just walk around in a circle, because this was what a Hagag was. You were to parade around and have a festival and be giddy, celebrate, dance. So that's what Yah's feast days are, the days that you celebrate. And those feast days, there's three of them. All right, so there's three different feasts that we have. But what we have to understand is that there's 7 holy days, but out of those 7 holy days, there's 3 feast days. All right. All right. So, and he said, "Go into the wilderness so that we can keep a feast." So these feast days are extremely important to Yah, especially when it comes to the releasing of the children of Israel. The feast days was tied into that. So just keep that in mind. These are important because this is the thing that he released us to go do. He said, "I don't want you in captivity. I want you to be free so you can go keep these feast days." All right. So now let's go to Leviticus chapter 23 and let's take a look at these so-called feast days and appointed times. All right. So we're going to go back here to KJV. Bear with us a little bit. It is running a bit slow. We're going to go to Leviticus, YAH, chapter 23. So we're going to go to Leviticus, chapter 23. All right, so let's pull it up. Leviticus. We're going to go to chapter 23. And we're going to start that at verse 1. And bear with me. I'm waiting for the screen to pop up. All right, so Leviticus 23. And we're at verse 1. So we're YAH, Leviticus chapter 23 and verse 1. And Yahweh spake unto Moshe, saying, Speak unto the children of Yasharal, and say unto them concerning the feasts. Okay, so now it says feasts, but notice here where it says feasts. All right, so we're not even at Leviticus 23. So bear with us, brothers and sisters. It's still not even there. All right, so we're going to look at that word for feasts. Remember, we saw feasts in Exodus. Feast in Exodus was Hagag. Feast in Exodus is Hagag. So when it's talking about let my people go so that they may keep a feast to me in the wilderness, that was Hagag. That was literally the parade, the holy day, the celebration, so forth and so on. But now Leviticus 23 and verse 1, it says, and Yahweh spoke unto Moshe, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel and say unto them concerning the feast of Yahweh. There's a different word they used here now. Now they're using H4150. That's a different Hebrew word. So we have to look at that word so we understand what it's talking about now. So if we look at that Hebrew word, it's a completely different word with a whole different root word. The word here is moed, which is Moed, H4150. And that's properly an appointment. That is a fixed time or season. So this is saying, speak unto the children of Israel, saying unto them concerning my appointed times. So now this is starting saying, these are all my appointed times. That includes the feasts and the other holy days that are involved, including the one that comes every week, which is the Sabbath. That is his appointed time. So when you see H4150 here, this is talking about appointed times. That doesn't necessarily mean that it is a feast where you're actually eating and celebrating, because you have atonement, which we just did this month in the seventh month, on the 10th day of the seventh month. That's an appointed day. That's a moade. That's a moedim. That's one of the appointed times, but that's not a feast. We don't eat on that day. We actually fast. So this is a different word, and this is why you have to look at the Hebrew to see what they're talking about here, because you'll read the English here and think it's the same thing. It's not. So again, we wanted to highlight the difference between the feasts, which there are 3 feasts throughout the year, right? And those 3 feasts, the Hebrew word for feast was Hagag. But now they're saying concerning the feast of Yahweh here in Leviticus 23, and this is the appointed times. So you have the feasts and you have the appointed times. So now it's talking about the appointed times, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations. Even these are my feasts. Even these are my appointed times. All right. So these are some important words we got to go over here. So holy, we got to look at what that is. So we understand holy is Kadash or Kadesh, right? Which is H6944. And that's a sacred place or consecrated, hallowed thing. All right. So these are my hallowed, right? And then convocations. Let's look at that word for convocations. You remember when we used to have convocations in school? All the kids, all the students had to come and sit in the auditorium and we had to hear something. All right, so let's see what the Hebrew word for convocations is. That's H4744. You see it highlighted. That Hebrew word for there is mikra, mikra, which is Miqra, mikra, which is something called out. That is a public meeting, also a rehearsal, assembly, calling of assembly, convocation, or reading. So this is when we come together, we are rehearsing something. What are we rehearsing? We're rehearsing holiness, hollowness, set apartness, kodesh. We're learning how to be holy. We're rehearsing that, right? We're also rehearsing coming together, right? Assembling together when the Most High says to come together. So we're practicing these things, and there's a reading. So all of these are in the definition of mikra. So again, his appointed times, we're supposed to be kodesh, and we're supposed to be reading, we're supposed to be gathering, and it's supposed to be called out. So everybody's supposed to know. And it says, even these are my feasts. All right, so verse 3, 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Shabbat of rest, a holy convocation. You shall do no work therein. It is a Shabbat of Yahweh in all your dwellings. All right, so why is he? I thought this was about the holy days, right? The feast days, right? Well, guess what? The Shabbat is a appointed day. It is a feast day, and this comes every week. And that's why it says it is a holy convocation. So when it says that it's a holy convocation, that means we can't work. It is like a Sabbath, it's like a day of rest. So when you look at that word 87677 for rest, right? Even these are my feasts. It is a Sabbath of rest. If you look at 87677, the Hebrew word for that is Sabbathon. 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 So that is like Sabbath. But this is Sabbathon, and that is a Sabbatism or special holiday. So it's saying, again, you're hallowing these days, and this particular one, the Sabbath day, which is the seventh day of the week, you are to hallow it, right? That's what Kodesh means, holy, to hallow it. And you are to gather, rehearse holiness, and read, and it's called out. Everybody supposed to know when this is supposed to happen. And you do no work. That is how you hallow that day. You do no work and you keep yourself hallowed, which is clean, Kodesh, set apart. And this is the Sabbath of Yahweh in all your dwellings. So it doesn't matter wherever you dwell. This you're supposed to keep the Shabbat on the seventh day of the week. All right, verse 4. These are the feasts of Yahweh. Again, these are the appointed times, Moade of Yahweh, even holy convocations, which you shall proclaim in their season. So he's talking about the Kodesh Mikras, where we're to gather on those days, and you're supposed to proclaim them in their seasons, right? Again, in their Moade, in their appointed times. All right, so there you have the Sabbath is the first one that Yah brought out as an appointed time. So, all right, so let's go back to where Yah actually appointed this. So we're going to go to Genesis chapter 2. So we're going to go to book of Genesis chapter 2, and we're going to start this at verse 1. All right, so we're at Genesis. We're going to go to chapter 2, and we're just going to read a few verses here. And these few verses we're going to read, we're going to see where Yah actually hallowed the Shabbat. So you see what that means. All right, so bear with me. It's taking extremely long for it to pull up the scripts, but we're going to pull it up so we can actually read it. All right. So it's Genesis. We're going to go to chapter 2, and we're going to start this at verse 1. Genesis chapter 2 and verse 1. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day, Elohim ended his work which he had made, and he rested. So he ended the work which he did, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. All right. So he created everything in 6 days. And on this seventh day of creation, which is the seventh day of the week, he rested. Right. Here it is. And Elohim blessed the seventh day. So this is why this day is different. He blessed, hallowed this day, and sanctified it. So to sanctify is to separate, because in it he had rested from all his work. So the key premise with Sabbath is rest, because the Most High rested this day. So he said, this is going to be a holiday from now into eternity. You are going to rest on this day because I rested on this day. So he hallowed it from all his work which he created and made. These are the generations of the heavens of the earth which he created in the day that Yahweh Elohim made the earth and the heavens. All right. So he blessed this day. All right. So there you have it. The Sabbath was hallowed and blessed. This is where he ordained it. So this is in the beginning of creation. He's establishing this Shabbat. All right. So now what we want to see is that this Sabbath that he hallowed that on the earth, and he made that a sign for us. All right. So he made this a sign. All right. So we're going to go to the book of Ezekiel. So we're going to go to the book of Ezekiel, and we're going to go to chapter 20, and we're just going to read 2 verses here where we're going to see that Yah uses this hallowed day of the Shabbat, right? He uses that day that he set apart, the Sabbath day, and he used it as a sign, as a signal. By us resting on that day and hallowing that day, this is a signal that we send to the Most High. So just like Batman, how Batman has his signal, right? He put up the big bat sign in the air, and when you see the big bat sign, that means, oh, that's a signal to Batman. We need you, right? Hey, we belong to you, Batman. This is Gotham City. This your city, Batman, right? We can't throw up the Superman sign and expect Batman to show up when we in problems. Because at the end of the day, Batman said, no, this is my sign right here. Use this sign. So it's the same thing with the Most High. We can't say, hey, Sunday, that's the sign we gonna use. But Yah said, no, 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 no. Hallow the seventh day, which is the Sabbath day, not the first day, which they call the sun's day, Domingo in Spanish, right? Not that day. That's the first day of the week. You can make that your day. But Yah said this seventh day is the day that I am hallowing. That's the day that I'm resting. And I command my creation to rest on that day. And furthermore, if you want to show me a sign, show it to me on my day, is what Yah is saying. So we're going to read this here in Ezekiel. So we're Ezekiel chapter 20, and we're going to start this at verse 19, and we're going to read verses 19 and 20. All right, so we're going to scroll down to verse 19. All right, here we go. So we're at verse 19 right here. All right. It says, I am Yahweh, your Elohim. Walk in my statutes and keep my judgments and do them. So does that sound like a suggestion to you? That's not a suggestion. That is a commandment. That is a demand, right? So he said, point blank, he let you know who he is. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. Walk in my statutes, keep my judges, and do them. And then it says, and hallow my Sabbaths. Hallow my Sabbaths, right? Set apart these Sabbaths, make them holy, and they shall be a sign between me and you. So again, the Shabbat, the fact that you set this day apart, that you keep this day off and you rest only because Yah said do this. This is the sign between me and you. So this is the sign between Yah and his children that you may know. So this is for us. This is a sign for us to know. This is how we know to ourselves that I am Yahweh, your Elohim. So again, this is so that we know that Yah is our God, not Satan, not America, not the Pope, not the pastor, not the elder, not the teacher, not the prophet, not the fake messiahs, none of that. I, Yahweh, am your Elohim. So if Yah, the God of the children of Israel, of the Hebrews, the God that is spoken of, that wrote this Bible, if that is your God, then he's telling you this is how you show me a sign to yourself, so you may know that I am your God. You hallow and you keep his Shabbat. All right. So the next thing we want to see is, all right, is this some Old Testament stuff? Let's see. All right. Let's see if Mashiach himself, because again, we don't hide this. We are followers of the Messiah, Yahushua Mashiach, which is written in this King James as Jesus Christ. We are believers in Mashiach, the Hebrew Messiah. We believe in him. So whatever he does, that's what we do. So if he keeps the Sabbath, we keep the Sabbath. And Yah said keep the Sabbath, so we know Mashiach kept the Sabbath, but we're going to prove it. Because Mashiach is the word in flesh. And Yah spoke the word, which was Mashiach, so he has to keep it. He has to do it because he is what is spoken. So let's read it. So let's go to Luke chapter 4. All right, so we're going to go to Luke chapter 4, and we're going to see what Mashiach did. Did he keep the Shabbat? All right, so we're going to Luke chapter 4, and we're going to go to verse 16. And again, this is an open forum. So if you have any questions, if something is not making sense, it's not adding up, or anything like that, or you need me to elaborate, by all means, go ahead and comment. We're at Luke chapter 4, and we're going to read verse 16. Luke chapter 4, and we're going to start this at verse 16. All right. Bear with it. I know the scripts is taking a little bit. I don't know what they done did, because even my wife's computer acting up. But they done they done shut me down. My computer won't even stay on when it's time for us to stream. And I was telling one of the ox the other day, I was on the phone and I was telling them, I was like, how last class they had it where I had a whole brother when we did the class, the brother in Netherlands, and his audio crystal clear. I'm here in the States streaming from here, and I'm sounding like a robot. And literally, as I told him I was sounding like a robot, the brother said all of a sudden my voice on the phone started sounding like a robot. So we up against something that, we don't even know what we up against, but just letting you know what we have to go through to bring you these things. So, we're doing the best we can. So at Luke chapter 4 and verse 16, and what we trying to see is, did Mashiach, did he keep the Shabbat? Because again, we followers of Christ. Christ is our head. He's our master. So whatever he commands us to do, and what he commands us is what YAH says. He don't command us to do nothing other than what YAH spoke, because he is the word. And not only is he going to command us to do it, he going to do it himself. So Luke chapter 4 and verse 16. Let's read it. And that way we read it, can nobody tell us different. Luke chapter 4 and verse 16. And he being Mashiach, Messiah, Yahushua, Christ, and he came to Nazareth where he had been brought up. So we know Mashiach was brought up in Nazareth, which is literally still the hood of Israel, right? Has he been brought up? And as his custom was, so as was customary, this is what he does, right? He went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day. So this is his custom. So this is what Mashiach does. This is what he has done from a child, from as he was brought up. So this is not him as a child going in there right now. This is him as an adult. If you go back and you read the beginning of verse 4, this is after he was led in the wilderness and tempted. So this is right after he got baptized. So now he is the God King High Priest in the flesh, the Son of the Most High in the flesh, starting his ministry, and he immediately goes into the temple on the Shabbat to teach. All right, so back to 16 again, as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Shabbat day and stood up to read. And why is he reading? Because this is a holy convocation, a Kodesh Mikra, like in Hebrew, where we just looked at that definition, right? And in Mikra, which is convocation, that means read. So he's reading. So guess what is he reading? And there was delivered unto him the book of the prophet Isaiah, which is Isaiah, Yeshiah. He reading the prophets. All right. So Mashiach kept the Sabbath. So you cannot tell me you a believer in Christ or a follower of Christ and you don't keep the Sabbath that Christ kept. You following somebody else. You following the Pope. You following a Greek. You following Constantine. Or you following your parents or whoever got you doing that. That's not what Mashiach did. And that's not what we were commanded to do. All right. So now the question is, well, he died. So he nailed the Sabbath to the cross. Oh, really? Did he? All right. Well, let's see what the disciples did after he died. And let's see what even the believers did after he died. Let's see what even the Gentiles did that wanted to believe in Christ after he died. So we're going to go to Acts chapter 13. So again, bear with me a second so I can get to it. Acts, the book of Acts. And we're going to chapter 13. And we're going to read a few verses here. I'm going to read 3 verses here, which is going to prove to you that after the birth, death, and resurrection of Mashiach, they are still keeping the Sabbath, YAH's Sabbath, not a Sunday Sabbath, not the Pope's Sabbath, not Constantine's Sabbath, not man's Sabbath, but the one that is similar in enunciation in almost every language. In Spanish, it's Sabado for Sabbath. In Greek, it's Sabbat, Sabbata, or something like that. Everything, it's Sabbath something, because the Sabbath is literally the 7th day of the week. All right, so we're Acts chapter 13, and we're going to read verses 42 through 44. All right, so we're going to see, are they still keeping the Sabbath, or was this nailed to the cross some kind of way? He freed us from the law of the Sabbath. No, he didn't. All right, so here we are, verse 42. Acts chapter 13 and verse 42. And when the Yahudim were gone out of the synagogue, the Gentiles. So now after the Yahudim are leaving Shabbat, the Gentiles, which cannot come inside the synagogue, it's unlawful for other nations to come in the holy temple. The Gentiles waiting for the Israelites to leave, and the Gentiles besought that these same words might be preached to them the next Shabbat. So they are gathering on the Sabbath to hear the words of YAH. And they say, well, next Shabbat, we gonna come and keep this stuff. All right. Now, when the congregation was broken up, many of the Yahudim and religious proselytes followed. So a proselyte is a convert. They followed Paul, which is Saul, and Barnabas, who speaking to them persuaded them to continue in the grace of Yah. And the next Sabbath. So again, they still keeping the Sabbath. The next Sabbath day came almost the whole city. So not only the Gentiles, the Israelites, there's even the strangers, strangers in the city that weren't even from around the Greeks. They came to hear the word of Yah. So there you have it. Even the Gentiles, even strangers, the whole city was coming to hear the Shabbat. So you can't tell me or give me any excuse or why you're saying that you can't keep the Shabbat and use Christ as some kind of example, or use the Bible or any biblical script as an example of why you not keeping the Shabbat. All right, so Exodus. Actually, we're going back to Leviticus. We're going back to Leviticus chapter 23, and we're going to get into some more of the feast days. All right, so bear with us. Takes a couple seconds for this to pull up. So we're back at Leviticus chapter 23, and we're going to drop down to Passover. All right, so we're going to go into Pesach, Leviticus chapter 23, and we're going to start this at verse 4. All right. So again, it says, these are the feasts of Yahweh. So if you look at that word there, H4150 ain't Hagag. That's Moade. So these are the appointed times of Yahweh. Even holy convocations you shall proclaim in their season. See again, H4150, in their seasons. Seasons, feasts, two different words, right? That's not the same thing. A feast is one thing, a season another thing, right? Because both of these are appointed times. A season is an appointed time. There's appointed time for fall. There's appointed time for winter. There's appointed time for spring, and then in summer, and so forth and so, right? So they mistranslated it. They didn't translate it with the most precise understanding, and that was by design. So we breaking it down because we can look at the Hebrew. So these are the feasts, or these are the appointed times of Yahweh, Kodesh Mikras, holy convocations, which you shall proclaim in their appointed times. So here are the appointed times. In the 14th day of the first month at even is Yahweh's Passover. All right. So now here it says at even. All right. 14th month, first month, 14th day of the first month. And here it says at even, but when we go read what actually happened here, is between even. So we'll get to that in a second. So on the 14th day of the first month, so the first month in Hebrew is Abib. This is in around March, the middle of March, between March and April, after you have equal day and equal night. All right, so on the 14th day of the first month is Yahweh's Passover. So we want to look at a few things here. So we will look at that word for Passover. H6453. So we're at Leviticus 23, and we're at verse 4, right? And we're looking at Passover, Yahweh's Passover, H6453. That Hebrew word for Passover was Pesach, Pesach, which is Pesach, Pesach. And that's Passover, and that's a pretermission, that is exemption. Use only technically of the Yahudim Passover, the festival or the victim of the Passover offering. So the victim of the Passover is what is killed on the Passover. And on the Passover, the lamb is killed, right? So the lamb is called the Passover, the Pesach, right? Because as we read the story, we're going to see here that death passed over us and went to the Passover lamb, the lamb that we killed instead of us getting killed. And instead of us getting killed, it passed over us and the firstborns of everything in Egypt, except for the children of Israel, were killed. So this happens at even on the 14th day. So when the 14th day is beginning to end and you're getting ready to start in the 15th day, that's when the Passover event happens, when you actually kill that Passover lamb. All right. So verse 6, and on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto Yahweh. So the Passover feast is not until the 15th day. On the 14th day, before it ends, is when you actually kill the Passover lamb, the victim, right? The victim is the Passover lamb, right? You kill that lamb on the 14th, and then you're to roast it by fire and do all of that. And then on the 15th day, when it becomes nightfall, starting the 15th day, that's when you have the actual Hagag, which is the feast. Now you have the actual feast when you actually eat. All right. So the feast of unleavened bread, the feast of unleavened bread is on the 15th day. All right. So let's look at that word for unleavened so we understand what that is in Hebrew. All right. So the Hebrew word for unleavened, and if you look at that word for feast again, before we even get into unleavened bread, right? H2282 is Hag, which is the root word of Hagag. So that is the sacrifice or solemnity day, the feast day, the day when you're actually killing that lamb, when you're doing that offering. All right. So unleavened is H4682. H4682. So unleavened bread is matzah, 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 matzah. And that's from H4711 in a sense of greedily devouring for sweetness, properly sweetness, concretely sweet. So again, unleavened bread is sweet. And when you add leaven to it, it becomes bitter and it puffs up. So when you put yeast in bread, it puffs up and it has more of a bitter taste. So the unbittered, which is the bread that has not been yeasted yet, has not received its bitterness, has not puffed up, is matzah. So the feast of unleavened bread is Hagag or Hag Matzah in Hebrew. So this is where we eat unleavened bread. All right, so let's continue reading. On the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto Yahweh. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. In the first day, you shall have a holy convocation. So on this is a 7-day holy day, right? On the first day, you have a holy convocation. That means you can't work. It's a Sabbathon. a holiday. You are supposed to take that day off from work, right? And you shall do no servile work therein. So you can't work on that day. That's a holiday. He wants you to rest. Just like the Sabbath, you can't work. You are to rest. That's how you hallow that day, right? In the first day, you have a holy convocation. You should do no servile work, but you should offer an offering made by fire unto Yahweh 7 days. And in the seventh day is a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein. So there again, you have it. No servile work. You can't do any work on that first day of unleavened bread, which is the 15th day of Abib, and on the 21st day, which is the last day, because of 15 being day one, 16 day two, so forth and so on. If you count 7 fingers, you get to 21. So the 21st day of Abib is the last day of that. And you keep your unleavened bread, and you have to take that day off. So that's the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And let's continue reading and see what you're supposed to do. All right. So we're going to go to Exodus, Shemot, chapter 12, and we're going to see what this whole Passover thing was about. So we're going to go to Exodus chapter 12. And we're going to read the first Passover when this was instituted and why we're doing this. What is this about? Why are we killing a lamb? What does this lamb got to do with everything? And then we're going to get into what does Mashiach have to do with that? So we're going to Exodus, Shemot chapter 12, and we're going to start that at verse 1 when we get there. So in Exodus, Shemot chapter 12, and we're at verse 1. All right. And Yahweh spake unto Moshe and Aaron in the land of Mizraim, saying, this month shall be unto you beginning of months. So this is Yah saying, this is when your year starts. I don't care what man says the year starts, or what your teacher says, or what your elder says, or what the Pope says, or whoever. This is what Yah says. If you are a follower of Mashiach, then you're doing what Mashiach did. If you're an Israelite, then you're doing what Mashiach did, and Mashiach did what Yahweh said to do. So again, Abib is the first month of the year, not the 7th month. That's what the Jewish people do. All right. It shall be the first month of the year to you. So again, this is the children of Israel. Speak you unto all the congregation of Yasharal, saying, in the 10th day of this month, you shall take to them every man a lamb according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. So again, prior to Mashiach, that's what we had to do. We had to take that lamb. It says a lamb for every house. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next to him unto his house take it according to the number of souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb. So it's saying, hey, if you got a small house and you can't eat this whole lamb, don't waste it. Invite your brother or sister. Invite your family. Invite one of your nation members to come share this lamb with you. But everybody has to eat. And it says, your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You shall take it from out the sheep or from the goats, and you shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month. So again, now the 14th day is when you're going to actually kill that Passover lamb, right? So why are we killing this lamb? Well, we're going to get into that, right? So keep in mind, we don't kill the lamb anymore. All right. Mashiach was our Passover lamb, and we're going to get into that, and we're going to show you how he fulfilled that. We memorialize these things, but this is the first Passover. So this is why, this is the reason for the season. All right. So we keep that lamb up until the 14th day of the same month. And the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. So everybody at the same time are supposed to kill their Passover lamb. And it says in the evening, right? So we know the 14th day is when this goes down. And it says in the evening, right? But what they didn't tell you is H996. If we look at what H996 is, that's a Hebrew word, and it's not it or in. It's a whole different word that changes the whole context of when on the 14th day is this supposed to be done. All right, so we're right here at verse 4. Excuse me, we're at verse 6. And it says, and the whole assembly of Israel shall kill it in the evening, right? So H996, if you look at that Hebrew word for H996, the Hebrew word there is bain, bain, which is Beyn, bain, H996, and that is properly the constructive contractive form of an unused noun, a distinction, but used only as a preposition. So a preposition is like showing you relation to something, right? So the preposition was between, before. So between or before evening, right? So when the evening of the 14th is coming, the ending of the 14th, before the next day comes, the 15th, or between. So the proper word that should have been used here was between the evenings. You have an evening that ends a day, which is it's starting to grow towards night, and you have an evening after it becomes night and it starts to grow darker after it's already been dark. So you got a portion where it's growing dark, and then you got another portion where it's dark and it's getting even darker. Those are your evenings. So in between evenings would mean at the end of the 14th day, before it turns dark and becomes the 15th day. So remember, in Hebrew, if you go back to Genesis, it says the evening and the morning were the first day. That's why our days start at night. They don't start, our calendar day doesn't start at midnight. And it doesn't start when the sun comes out. It starts in the evening when it becomes nightfall. So in between the 14th and the 15th, you shall take of the blood, you kill it, right? And then verse 7, they shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts and on the upper door posts of the house, wherein they shall eat it. All right, so we took the blood from the Passover lamb and we put a like a upside down U, almost like we're painting the door, like the door posts of our house, with the blood from that lamb, from that Passover lamb. All right, that was the tradition that they were to do at that time. So they painted it, so they had to kill that lamb on the 14th day, and they had to put all that stuff up before the 15th day. All right. Verse 8, and they shall eat the flesh in the night, roast with fire and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. So that's what we're to do. We are to eat and have our feast when it becomes night. So you had the 14th day, right? 14th day comes, and at the end of the 14th day, when it becomes evening, when it's starting to grow from even to evening, now you kill the lamb before it gets dark. Then it becomes dark and it turns the 15th, and now you're eating the Passover lamb, and you eating it with unleavened bread, which is matzah, and with bitter herbs. Now you are in the feast of Passover, or the feast of unleavened bread, which is the 15th day. Now you're eating that matzah, that unleavened bread, and you're eating with bitter herbs. Eat it not of it raw, nor sodden it all with water, so you can't even boil it. You can't eat it raw, but you're supposed to roast it with fire. His head with his legs with the pertinence thereof. So you're not even supposed to gut it, do nothing. You're supposed to just roast it all out and then eat the Passover lamb. All right. So that means when you roast something, that's quick. That's a quick cook. We had to eat it in haste because what we're about to see, why we were eating it in haste. And it says, and you shall let nothing of it remain until the morning. So again, it's nighttime when you're eating it, and you can't let it remain to the morning of the 15th calendar day. It had to be done at night. That's how it had to be done in haste. Because if you can't eat it till the nighttime, and it has to be done before the morning, then you had to move in haste. And we're going to show you how much haste when you see when they got kicked out of Egypt. They got kicked out in the middle of the night. So that means they had to kill it when it became dark, right? Excuse me, kill it right before it became dark. Put all the blood on their doorposts. Get back in their house, roast the lamb, and they couldn't eat it until the 15th till it became night. And when they ate it at nighttime, they had to eat, celebrate, do all that stuff, and be in the house before midnight. We'll see why before midnight when we continue reading. And it says, and that which remaineth of it until the morning you shall burn with fire. So anything that's left over, you got to burn it. You can't eat it. It got to be burnt. And thus shall you eat it with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it in haste. It is Yahweh's Passover. So we're supposed to be girded up, we dressed up nice, you know what I'm saying? Have our loins girded, which means having your belt tight, not your pants hanging behind your butt, because you got to be able to move. You can't move if your pants is hanging and you don't have a belt on and you're not tight because you don't want to run naked, right? And it says shoes on your feet, staff in your hand. That means be ready, ready to go. Eat it in haste. It is Yahweh's Passover. So again, this is Yah's victim. This is Yah's Passover. He said, I'm passing this over to this lamb. This is your option. He can pass over to this lamb, or else it could be something else. We're going to see what the other else is. Verse 12. For I will pass through the land of Mizraim this night, and I will smite all the firstborn in the land of Mizraim, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment, and the mighty ones, all the Pharaoh and his officers and all that type of stuff. I will execute judgment. I am Yahweh. And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, and this is the blood from the Passover lamb that we painted on our doorposts, right, on the lintels of our doors, I will pass over you. So that's what that Passover means. When that death was coming to the firstborns in Egypt because Pharaoh refused to let us go, the final striking blow was, well, I'm killing the firstborn of everything. Firstborn of man, firstborn of animals, firstborn of everything that exists, I am killing it. Unless you got that blood on your doorpost of Yahweh's Passover, and those that have that, I will pass over you. And it says, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Mizraim. And this day shall be unto you for a memorial. And you shall keep it a feast to Yahweh. So verse 14, this is why we still do it, even though we not killing the Passover lamb no more, because Mashiach was our Passover. It says it is a feast. It is a Hagag to Yahweh throughout your generations. You shall keep it a feast by ordinance forever. So this is something that we are supposed to do forever. So let's look at that word for memorial, though, right? It shall be a memorial for you, right? So the word that was there for memorial is 2146. Zikron, which is Zikron. And that is a memento or a memorable thing. day of writing, memorial, or record. So this is why we still keep Passover, because again, it's an ordinance that we're supposed to keep forever, and we're supposed to memorialize it. Remember it. Don't forget. Set apart. Bring this into remembrance. So we keep that feast on the 14th day. Between evens, we kill that Passover lamb, which we don't kill it anymore, but we remember that. That's when it happened. And then on the 15th day, we actually have a feast. We eat, we celebrate, and remember that. And the 7 days, you eat all unleavened bread, right? From the and this is important. You keep it a feast by ordinance forever. Verse 15, 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread. So from the 15th day of Abib, of the first month, to the 21st day, you are to eat unleavened bread. So every day you eat bread for those 7 days, bread that has no leaven in it. That is a specific type of bread. All right. And this is important here. It says, even the first day you shall put away leaven out of your houses. So this is why once unleavened bread starts, which is the 15th day, from that day forward, from the 15th to the 21st, you can have no leaven in your house. That means no yeast or rising, self-rising chemicals that cause things to rise. That has to be put out of your house. And what we do when the first month starts, we about the beginning of the first month, we start to remove the leaven out of our house. So we go and get the baking soda. We stop buying all the bread that has the leaven in it, that has baking soda or has yeast in it. We stop buying that. And by the time the 14th day or the 15th comes, we got it all out of our house. We sweep our house, we clean our cars, we vacuum, we wipe the walls down, we clean, we get, because when you talk, bread spit out your mouth, it could be stuck on your wall. We do whatever we can. We vacuum to get the leaven out of our house and all our dwellings. That's what we do. So that's how you keep unleavened bread. You get rid of all the leaven, all the yeast, all the feast out of your house, all the yeast out of your house. And on the first day is a Sabbath that you'll be off that day. That's when we have the holy day. We keep that day. And then on the last day, the 21st day, the same thing. We have another holy day, which means we're off from work. And in those 7 days, we're eating unleavened bread, which is matzah, right? And we get rid of all leaven, yeast, and all leavened bread. And leavened bread is called lachaim. It's a whole different word for leavened bread in Hebrews, lachaim. But unleavened is matzah. All right, so it says, for whosoever eats leavened bread, that means anything yeast, from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Yasharal. So not only do we have to have the Passover lamb, we got to get rid of the leaven. And remember, leaven is yeast. It causes something to turn bitter. When you put leaven in bread, it takes the sweet taste out of the bread and it becomes bitter. And it causes it to puff up. And as we see later, as we go into this, we see leaven represents sin. Sin causes you to be bitter. Sin causes you to puff up, to be puffed up. We say, oh man, he puffed up. That means he's haughty, proud, sinful, right? So we get rid of that. So yeah, we get rid of the physical leaven in our house, but spiritually, what we're supposed to be doing is getting rid of the sin in our house. And you are the house for Yah's spirit. So you start inventorying the things that you're doing to offend the Most High, which is transgressing the law, and you make sure you tighten those things up before the holy day comes around. And hopefully you keep those things out. All right, so again, we read all that first day, convocation, self same day. All right, so let's go back down here. And in the first day there shall be a holy convocation, and in the 7th day shall be a holy convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done, except that which every man must eat. So again, on these holy days, You can do work to eat, like you can put some stuff together to eat, but on the Shabbat, you're not supposed to do that. On the Shabbat, you're supposed to use the preparation day to do that. But here it's saying on this day, you can, on the 14th, you can do that preparation and you can do what you need to do to eat, because again, you got to roast, don't you? You got to roast that lamb. So you roast them on the 14th day and you eat on the 15th. And it says, that which every man must eat, that only may be done of you. So only work you can do is the work to eat. And you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread. Because the feast of unleavened bread is the 15th day of Abib. For in the self same day have I brought your armies out of the land of Mizraim. Therefore you shall observe this day in your generations by ordinance forever. So we left out of Egypt literally on the 15th day. So on the 15th day of Abib, which is the holy day, we left out of Mizraim. So we're going to see when exactly, because there's significance to that. All right. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at even, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at even. All right. So the 14th day at even is between the 14th and the 15th day. So that's right when it's about to be the 15th, because you eat it 7 days, right? Not on the 14th day, you don't eat it. On the 15th, count with me. 15th 1, 16th 2, 17th 3, 18th 4, 19 excuse me, I confused myself. 15 1, 16 day 2, 17 day 3, 18 day 4, 19 day 5, 20 day 6, and 21 day 7. That shows you that only 7 days you're supposed to be eating that unleavened bread. Not on the 14th day, on the 15th day, because if you're eating it on the 14th day, then that's 8 days. And 8 days is a whole nother feast for 8 days, not this one. We're going to get into that when we get in the second half of the holy days. All right, so we're only dealing with the first half of the holy days, which take place in the warm part of the year. All right. So until the 21st day of the month at even, right? 7 days there shall be no leaven found in your houses, for whosoever eat that which is leavened, even that soul shall be cut off. All right, so it says there should be no leaven found. So it said no leavened bread and no leaven. So it's not just leavened bread, no leaven. All right, whosoever eat which is leavened, even that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Yasharah, whether he be a stranger or born in the land. You shall eat nothing leavened in all your habitations. You shall eat unleavened bread. All right. So we're going to skip down a little bit just for time's sake. So they put it on their doorposts, and it says Yahweh's going to smite the Egyptians. When he sees the blood on the doorpost, he's going to pass over us. All right. And it says in verse 24, and you shall observe this thing for an ordinance to you and your sons forever. And it shall become to pass when you come into the land which Yahweh shall give you, according to as he promised, that you shall keep this service. So again, we are to keep it in the land. This service is only to be kept in the land. The memorial is forever. This is why we can't kill the lamb right now, for several reasons. One, it can only be done in Jerusalem. We're not in Jerusalem. We in Babylon, America. For two, Mashiach, our Passover lamb, he got rid of the blood portion of the law. So we don't do animal sacrifices and death penalty and eye for eye too. We don't do that no more. He was our Passover lamb, which we're going to read next. But even if he wasn't here and that didn't happen, we still couldn't do it according to the law. So we memorialize it, like he said, which is remember all these things. And why are we to remember it? Verse 26, and it shall come to pass when your children shall say unto you, what mean you by this service? Then you shall say, is the sacrifice of Yahweh's Passover, who passed over the houses of the children of Yasharal in Mizraim when he smote the Egyptians and delivered our houses, and the people bowed the head and worshiped. So this is so that our kids remember what Yah did for us, that he allowed death to pass over. This is all a shadow of things to come. This is all leading up to Mashiach, which is Mashiach leading up to something else. All right. So the children of Israel did what they were supposed to do, right? Now, verse 29, and it came to pass that at midnight, Yahweh smote all the firstborn in the land of Mizraim, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne unto the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of the cattle. He even killing the cows, everything. And why would he kill them cows? Well, remember, the Egyptians worshiped them cows too. So he's showing you, yeah, that cow ain't no God either. He killed the cow too. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Mizrites. And there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house there that was not one dead. And he called for Moshe and Aaron by night. So again, this is midnight. This is in the middle of the night of the 15th of unleavened bread. And said, rise up, get you forth from among my people, both you and the children of Yasharal, and go. Go serve Yahweh as you have said. Also take your flocks and your herds as you have said, and go and bless me also. So there you have it. We left out on the 15th. And if you read the rest of that story, we ran the Egyptians. They had to give us the jewels, run them jewels. They took the gold, the silver, everything. We took our stuff and we got up out of there because Yah did the business. He did his Passover. Praise Yah. So what we want to look at next is, did Mashiach keep the Passover? So let's go to Matthew chapter 26. So we're going to Matthew chapter 26. Did Mashiach keep the Passover? Or did he nail it to the cross or something like that? Matthew chapter 26. And we're just going to read a few verses here, and then we have a few more things to read to get into Pentecost. We got to go over a few more holy days. So Matthew chapter 26, and we're going to read verses 17 through 25. Matthew chapter 26, drop down to verse 17. All right. Now, the first day of the feast of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Yahushua, saying unto him, where will you that we prepare to eat the Pesach? So he keeping Passover. He's literally keeping Passover. All right, so we read that. So Mashiach kept the Passover, right? And he said, go into the city to such a man and say unto him, the master says, my time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at your house with my disciples. So he kept the Passover and he kept it with the disciples. And another class, when we go a little bit more into Passover, we're going to see that Mashiach kept Passover a different day than the Sanhedrin, which is the Pharisees and the Jewish people kept at that time. They kept a different day because they killed him on, which is the real Passover, right? They killed him on the real Passover. Excuse me, I'm sorry. They killed him on their Passover, but he kept the real Passover. So this is why you have the same thing to this day, where you got people keeping all different types of holy days, because you got some that's keeping it the way he's supposed to be kept, and you got others that's keeping it the way tradition says to keep it. All right, so he kept the Passover. Let's go down to First Corinthians, and we're going to see that Mashiach is our Passover. So we're going to read a few verses there. All right. So we're going into First Corinthians. First Corinthians chapter 5. And we skipped a little bit around for some time's sake, but we're just going to get to the main points. First Corinthians chapter 5. All right, so we're going to First Corinthians chapter 5, and we just want to read two verses here. First Corinthians chapter 5, and we're going to read verses 7 and 8. All right. And did the disciples keep Passover after Mashiach's death? Well, let's see. Because this is First Corinthians now. So we know this is after the birth, death, and resurrection of Mashiach. First Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 7. Purge out therefore the old leaven, that you may be a new lump. So again, it's telling you, hey, get rid of that leaven in you. Get rid of that sin. Leaven represents sin, right? So you may be a new lump as you are unleavened. For even Mashiach, our Passover, is sacrificed for us. So there you have it. Mashiach is our Passover victim. All right. So remember, the Passover is the victim of the holy day, which is the sacrifice. And Mashiach was our sacrifice, sacrificed for us. All right. So now here we go. Did they keep Passover? Here we go. Therefore, let us keep the feast. So they're telling you again, this Corinthians, this is Paul. Let's keep the feast day. So this is after the birth, death, and resurrection of Mashiach. And this is a special vessel chosen unto Mashiach. Because remember, Mashiach chose Paul or Saul after his birth, death, and resurrection, and said, this man is special to me. And this man who was chosen specifically and specially by the Messiah, Mashiach, after he was sitting on the right hand of the Father, said, let's keep the feast. So they were definitely keeping the feast days after his birth, death, and resurrection. And he's saying, not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. That means with a sincere, honest intent to keep the truth. So if you know that Passover ain't this day, or you know it ain't Easter, and you're doing all this other stuff, ain't no truth in that. And you ain't sincerely trying to keep the truth. So we have to do these things according to the spirit of truth and in sincerity. All right. So they kept it. And the believing Yahudim kept it as well. All right. So let's move on. Now let's go to the next holy day. So we're going back to Leviticus chapter 23. Almost done with this first set here. So we're going back to Leviticus 23. And we're going to go to verse 9 through 14. And we're going to get into the Feast of First Fruits. And First Fruits is one of them holy days because it's not a Sabbathon where, you get off from work. Folks don't care about it. They don't care when, about First Fruits, because guess what? Ain't no day off from work. Ain't no big celebration day. It's only about Mashiach being weighed before the Father, right? It's only about his spirit coming down to us. But because they don't understand what first fruits represents, and the fact that we want to be Mashiach's first fruits, we want to be his first fruits. We want to be the 144. We want to be all these things, but we don't understand what these holy days represent. And they talk about Easter. Oh, Easter Sunday represents Christ rising from the dead. No, it don't. Easter comes from Easter, Astaroth, which is a pagan god of fertility, a Greek Babylonian pagan god. And it's Greek when they changed the name to Artemis and to Diana and all. That's when it became Greek, but they stole that from the Babylonian god. We have a holy day for his resurrection, and that's called the Feast of First Fruits. So while you want to celebrate Easter as it being the day of his resurrection, Yah already ordained the day for that. And that's this one here, Feast of First Fruits. So we're at Leviticus chapter 23, and we're reading verses 9 through 14. Verse 9. All right, let's go down to verse. Oh my goodness, I don't know what's up with this. Is it even? Bear with me 1 second. I don't even know why it's not even pulling up the whole verse. Jeez. It took that long for Leviticus 23 to come up. All right. So verse 14, we're going to scroll down to it. You wouldn't believe this if you didn't witness this yourself. You would think that I'm just making up stuff, but you witnessing this yourself. All right. So Leviticus chapter 23 and verse 14. Excuse me, not verse 14. We want to start this at verse 9. And Yahweh spoke unto Moshe, saying, Speak unto the children of Yasharal, and say unto them, When you be come into the land which I give you, and you shall reap the harvest thereof, then you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest unto the priest. And a sheaf is a specific weighted amount. Okay. So when somebody gives you a specific amount, somebody say bring an ounce or bring a pound. When Yah tells you a specific, that means that's what you're supposed to bring. When he say, hey, make a free will offering, offer whatever you can, that's a different type of offering. So this is not a free will offering, which is whatever you can offer. This is a specific amount. You're supposed to give a sheaf, which I believe is like an eighth of an omer or half an omer or something like that, which is a specific weighted amount, a dry weighted amount. You're supposed to bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest unto the priest. All right. And he shall wave the sheaf before Yahweh to be accepted for you on the morrow after the Shabbat, the priest shall wave it. So this right here, the Jewish people, they just confused the crap out of them. When the Jewish people didn't understand this, so when they saw this, they saw they saw this written right after Passover, so they thought this was after the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the first day of unleavened bread, because that's a Sabbathon, but that's not a Sabbath. Sabbath is the seventh day of the week, and Feast of Unleavened Bread don't fall on the seventh day of the week. The Feast of Unleavened Bread cannot fall on the seventh day of the week. No holy day can fall on the seventh day of the week because the Sabbath is set apart completely. It's its own holy day. So if your holy day falls on the physical Sabbath day of the week, it's off. So on this particular holy day, the morrow after the Sabbath is talking about after you have unleavened bread, the 7 days of unleavened bread, the 21st, then you have the regular week and the Sabbath comes. The morrow after the Sabbath is always the first day of the week. So that's a Sunday. So this would be after the 21st of the first month, which is after the 7th day of unleavened bread. You have your regular week. The 7th day of unleavened bread ends on a Monday, right? Then you got Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Then you have your Sabbath, which is a regular Sabbath that comes after your unleavened bread. That next day is Sunday. the first day of the week, that is your feast of first fruits. That is when the priest is supposed to wave the offering before Yah. And then it talks about, some offerings here, sheep, a he lamb without blemish, and such, meat offering, 2 tenths deals, so forth and so on, right? But here's the important part in verse 14. And it says, you shall eat neither bread, nor parched corn, nor green ears until the same day that you brought an offering unto Yahweh your Elohim. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations. And here's one of the clues how you know that this has to happen outside of unleavened bread, because it says you can't eat bread. And that word for bread is lahaim, not matzah. Matzah is specifically unleavened bread. They wouldn't have to tell you if you in the second day of unleavened bread that you can't eat unleavened bread. You can't eat regular bread until after you make this offering on the second day of the 7-day feast day, because you still can't eat bread with leaven in, because it say you can't eat bread with leaven in it for 7 whole days. So that lets you know that this has to be outside of unleavened, the 7 days of unleavened bread, or it'd be no point in telling you that you can't eat it until after that you make this offering. So this is after unleavened bread. So after you have your 7 days of unleavened bread, your 7th day of unleavened bread ends on a Monday night. So you got Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, and then when Friday night comes, that starts your Sabbath. Saturday night, which is the following day, that's when you have your Feast of First Fruits. All right, so that is very, very important to know when to start your Feast of First Fruits, because your Feast of First Fruits, you got to wait until the next Sabbath after that. And that's when that's going to be your count for the next holy day, which is Pentecost. So we're going to get to that. All right, so till you've brought an offering, it shall be a statute through all your generations. All right, so verse 15. Now we're getting into the last one of the last holy day of the season, of the first set of holy days, Pentecost. Right? It says, and you, verse 15, and you shall count unto you from the morrow after the Shabbat, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering. All right, so a sheaf is a specific amount. Again, remember, a sheaf is only offered on a specific day, on first fruits. So this sheaf that's being offered on first fruits, right? The morrow after that is Sunday, the first day, right? When that day comes, it says, from that day that you brought the sheaf of the 7 Sabbaths shall be complete. So you got to count 7 Sabbath days. So 7 Sabbath days, 7 times 7, that's 49 days. And even until the morrow after the 7th day, 7 Sabbaths shall you number 50 days. That's why it's called Pentecost, because you have to number 7 Sabbaths after first fruits, which will give you 49 days. And then one day after that, which is a Sunday, because Sabbath is always on a Saturday, right? The day after that is Sunday. You got the 50th day. That is your Pentecost. And it says, you shall offer a new meat offering unto Yahweh. You shall bring out of your habitation 2 wave loaves of 2 tenth deals. It shall be a fine flour, so forth and so on. They are the first fruits unto Yahweh, because this is considered one of the first fruits, because this is also the first fruit of this new season, because this is coming around the middle of the 3rd month. So you're getting ready to go into the new season, and you making an offering. All right, so your first fruits, you have a whole holy day that's set aside for first fruits. And then now you have 3 other feast days in which you have first fruits offerings. All right. Those first fruits offering, you're having one here for your first fruits offering for your harvest, that which happens in the summer, which is your wheat. And then you have your grain offering, which is your barley, which is in the beginning of the year in Abib. And then towards the end of the year, you have that last one, which is tabernacles. where you're doing like the grapes and things like that, which is in the cold season. All right, so 7 Sabbaths shall be complete. Let's skip down a little bit. You're doing all these offerings, so forth and so on, lambs, all that. We're going to skip past that. All right. Verse 21. And you shall proclaim on the same day that it be a holy convocation unto you. You shall do no servile work therein. So it is a Sabbathon, a holiday where you are not permitted to work. You rest and celebrate. Yah's holy days are for celebration. There's only one day, holy day, that we don't celebrate, which is in the second half of the year, and that's atonement. When we go over that, we'll go into that. So this is a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein. It shall be a statute forever. So that means it doesn't end forever. Then it says in all your dwellings throughout your generations. So that don't matter if you in Israel or whether you in Babylon or whether you in Jamaica or wherever. You are to keep these holy days. And for some reason, this the only holy day that the Christian church keeps. Because they don't keep Pentecost. They don't keep Passover. They don't keep unleavened bread. They don't keep tabernacles. They don't keep atonement. They don't keep trumpets. But they keep Pentecost. Why do they keep Pentecost? Well, one, because it's an offering, but because they talked about it a little bit more in detail in the New Testament. And they wanted to keep Passover, but they have to keep it by Easter. They call it Easter so they can mix in their pagan festivities with it. All right, so there you have your Pentecost. All right, so let's see what this Pentecost represents. So we know Mashiach fulfilled Passover and represents the death passing over us, died for us. That leads us into unleavened bread, where he was buried and laid unleavened, sinless, a man who did not sin, in the grave. And on the Shabbat, on the Sabbathon, he rested on the Sabbath day, the Sabbathon of unleavened bread. 3 full days and 3 full nights he rested. Then he got up, right? Then, and if you read in another place, he said, "Don't touch me. I haven't been before my Father." Then about 8 days later, he's like, "Look, touch me." Spirits don't have flesh and bone, indicating that he had went to the Father already. So he fulfilled first fruits. Mashiach is our first fruits. All right. So if we go to 1 Corinthians chapter 15, we're going to see that he was our first fruits. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 20, it says Mashiach was the first fruits of them that slept. And then you get into Pentecost. Now we're seeing Pentecost where we're making another offering. So let's see what this Pentecost represents. So let's go to Acts. Acts chapter 2. Acts chapter 2, and we're going to see what Pentecost represents. And we're going to see, did they keep Pentecost after his birth, death, and resurrection? All right, so we're going to Acts chapter 2, and we're going to read 1 through 20. Excuse me, we're not going to read 1 through 20, 1 through 12. So we're going to Acts chapter 2, and we're going to read verses 1 through 12. As soon as this pulls up, there we go. Acts chapter 2 and verse 1. And when the day of Pentecost was fully come, they were all with one accord in one place. And suddenly there came a sound from heaven as of a rushing, a mighty wind, and it filled all the house where they were sitting. And it appeared unto them cloven tongues like a fire, and it sat on upon each of them. And they were all filled with the Ruach HaKodesh, which is the Holy Ghost, and began to speak with other tongues as the Spirit gave them utterance. And there were dwelling at Jerusalem Yahudim, devout men out of every nation under heaven. Now, when this was noised abroad, the multitude came together and were confounded, because that every man heard them speak in his own language. So again, because you have people coming from all over the country, all over the world, to keep Pentecost after the birth, death, and resurrection of Mashiach, they all spoke different languages. But the men that were speaking, you're going to see, are all understanding each other in their own language, but they're speaking in their own language. And what you're going to find out is they were understanding any language that was spoke, like if they spoke it, like they just had one of those things in their ears that just translate languages. Verse 7, they were all amazed and marveled, saying one another, behold, are not all they which speak Galileans? So when the Galileans were speaking, which were the disciples, were speaking at Pentecost, what was it, Kepha, Peter? He Galilean, and he's speaking in Hebrew. And they're like, how do we understand this? We from all these different provinces and places, but we understand this in our own language. And how we hear we every man in our own tongue when we were born. Parthians and Medes, Elamites, the dwellers of Mesopotamia, so even Babylonians, in Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus, Asians, even the Asians understand, Phrygia, Pamphylia, Egyptians, Libyans, Cyrenians, strangers of Rome, even the Romans understood. Jews and proselytes, Cretes and Arabians, even the Arabic. We do hear them speak in our tongues the wonderful works of YAH. And they were all amazed and were in doubt, saying to one another, what means this? Others mocking said, these men are full of new wine. But Kepha, standing up with the 11, lifted up his voice and said unto them, you men of Judea, and all you that dwell at Jerusalem, be this known unto you, and hearken to my words. For these are not drunken as you suppose, seeing it is but the third hour. So it's like 9 o'clock in the morning. Everybody can't be drunk at 9 o'clock in the morning. But this is that which was spoken of by the prophet Joel. And it shall come pass in the last days that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young man shall see visions, and your old man shall dream dreams. All right, so we're going to stop right there on that. But what you see here is Yah was pouring out the spirit. He was pouring out the Ruach HaKodesh on everybody. And when they received it, they were able to understand the spirit of truth, no matter what language it was. And that's what Pentecost represents. And initially, when we were given the word in the wilderness journey, it was around the third month, around the same time. And we received, that's like his word coming down. And that's what Pentecost represents. All right. And Pentecost as a season represents the church period, because as this period now after this, as we scroll down, now it says, since you have Gentiles getting this, who has a problem with the Gentiles getting baptized? All right, so let's move on. Let's go to the conclusion. Let's go to Yohanan, John chapter 7. Yohanan. Actually, no, I'm sorry. We're not going there. We're not going to John chapter 7. We're going to stop there today. So that's all we're going to do there today. What we'll do is we'll pick up and do the second half of this, which will give you the second set of holy days, which we just experienced. But these are the first set of holy days. So again, just to recap, you have your Passover, which is the preparation day, which is the 14th. Towards the end of that 14th day, when you're getting ready to start your 15th day, which is nighttime, that's when the Passover is killed. It's killed at the end of the 14th calendar day. Then the beginning of the 15th Hebrew calendar day, that's when you have your unleavened bread. And Mashiach represented that Passover lamb being our Passover lamb. And he represented the unleavened bread by him being a sinless man who died for our sins and laid in that grave sinless and rested on the Sabbathon on the 15th day. That gives you several days later, more than several days later, brings you into the Feast of First Fruits. And this is when he actually went before the Father. And shortly right after that, he came down and was seen and was like, touch me, I'm good. I've been to the Father. That represents him rising from the dead and going before the Father. And then that brings us to the last holy day we did today, which is Pentecost. And the Hebrew word for that is Shabbat. Shabbat. And the Hebrew word for first fruits is Bikurim. Bikurim. That's for first fruits. Bikurim. That's for first fruits. And then the Hebrew word for Pentecost is Shabbat. With Shabbat means 7. Shabbat. All right. And with Pentecost, that represents us receiving the Spirit, the Word coming down to us, the Holy Spirit being given out to the world. This is starting the church period, because after this point, now the Gentiles were able to receive immersions. They received the Spirit because even they were understanding the Holy Spirit, receiving the Holy Ghost, and understanding Galilean, and understanding and able to speak the truth and say amen. So Kepha, who was given the keys to the kingdom, said, well, if it ain't nobody disputing, since they getting the Holy Spirit, then they can now be baptized. And now they became part of Mashiach's church. And that began the church period. So that's what we're going to do today. Thank you if you hung in there with us. We had to do something different. We had to kind of dumb it down. Had to use a whole nother computer to get this done. I have no idea what's up. But bottom line is, we're going to do what we can to bring this word to you. So if you can make the classes, or you can view the class later, definitely take the time to view it, because, we just you don't know how long they're doing strange things. We just don't know how long they're going to allow us to keep doing this. So again, that's all we're going to do today. My name is YAH. If you would like to reach out to us, we have our application on the internet. You can download it, an app store. The iOS app is Israelites Gathering, and Google Android apps for Google Play Store, it's also Israelites Gathering. I believe we are now done updating on Android, so we should be able to update on Android. If you haven't updated your app already on Apple, go ahead and update your app, because you won't get the new classes on there if you don't update your app. So you're going to need to go ahead and update the app, which means you go to App Store and just, search for Israelites Gathering and update. So that's all we're going to do today. Yah's will. We will see you for Shabbat. And again, that's a big emphasis on Yah's will, because we can only do the best we can and try to bring these things to you. So if you have any questions, again, you can reach out to us via email at saveyourword@gmail.com, or you can direct message us on the app. Either way, we'll get that. And if you'd like to donate to us, our Cash App is $SWORD ATL. If you're on YouTube, hit the donate button. I'm gonna have to probably get some new equipment. I don't know what they done did to this MacBook. We're gonna have to, invest in some new things to try to do something different, because they really, really trying to hold us back from doing these classes. And I've been saying this for years, and I mean, finally they got to a point where they, they got a step ahead of me. But I've been working to stay a step ahead of them. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna try to stay a step ahead of them. So Yah's will. We'll see you for Shabbat. I hope everybody gained from this, and everybody enjoy the rest of their Shabbat. Excuse me, the rest of their night. Shalom.